Now, look, as bullish as I am on Boston, I would never suggest that Boston or anybody in the East can beat Golden State. And as much as I like Houston, and I frankly think that Oklahoma City has truly emerged as a threat in the Western Conference, the way they've played over the last month, you have to look at the Warriors and say, can anybody beat them 4 out of 7? And I think you can make a reasonable argument that this is the best Warriors team in the last 3 years, just because of Kevin Durant's comfort with this group.
Yes.
The fact that some of these younger guys starting to emerge, Jordan Bell in the mix, by the postseason this year. Another rotation player you add. These guys, they may not win 70-plus games, but they are so comfortable playing together that when they get to the postseason, I think they're going to be the same almost impossible team to beat.
Yes, unless they have an injury. And also, Durant's been empowered. The Finals MVP, finally being the champion. And if you look at the only success he's had against LeBron has been since he's gone to Golden State. I mean, the record was totally lopsided. So from a psychological standpoint, they match up with everyone very well. So the overall continuity, you mentioned they have a couple situational players that makes them more athletic than they have been. So this Golden State team, man, I don't see anyone beating them. I think they're going to win in the finals because Kevin Durant's ability to be able to take over games and take over moments in games, it's a huge difference between just Steph, Clay, and Draymond. When you add Kevin Durant, his ability also to protect the rim. We always wondered, man, they're going small. They're not going to. Man, we didn't know that this great defender in Kevin Durant was inside of that body. That combination right there makes Golden State really special.
All right, so I want to say 2 things that I think are givens. One, we all agree that if some injury happens, that changes everything. So we're assuming full health for everybody across the league. 2, we all agree the Warriors are the favorites. They are literally the Vegas favorites, and we all agree they should be the favorites.
Yeah, we believe they're the best, too. There's a difference between being favorite and being the absolute best.
Right. I think we all agree on all 3 of those points. I think Houston absolutely can beat them. I think Houston can beat them 4 out of 7. They would be the underdog to do so. It would take Houston to play its best basketball. But there's 2 things that I think work particularly in Houston's favor. One is just the variance of the way they play. When you shoot as many three-pointers as Houston does, if you catch fire for 2 games in a 7-game series, you can steal 2 you weren't supposed to steal. Then you got to win 2 other ones. And the other thing that works in Houston's favor, I think, is we do have to recognize Houston this year is yet to lose a game that Harden, Paul, and Capella play start to finish. Like, I think it's now they're 16-0. It's not a tiny sample size. It's not an enormous one either. But Houston has, it's weird to say this because they don't have anyone on their team that's won a championship, anyone of note. But what they do have, I think, is big game experience throughout the roster. Now, some of that experience is bad experience for Chris Paul and James Harden, but I don't think a moment will be too big for either of those guys. Chris Paul, to me, seems to relish the opportunity going up against Steph Curry, who, as crazy as people believe it, or think this sounds, Chris Paul believes he's better than Steph Curry and has always believed it. And Harden is the best player in the league that's not on the Warriors or the Cavs. So for all those reasons, I think the Rockets have a legitimate shot in this.
I would agree with that. And one thing I would add is that at one point in December, people kind of woke up and looked at the defensive ratings, and suddenly Houston was inside the top 10. And Mike D'Antoni's often said, if we're a top 15 team defensively, we're a true playoff contender. Yeah. If we're a top 10 defensive team, we're a title contender. And Chris Paul was the big offseason acquisition, right? Everybody talked about Chris Paul. The difference makers, though, for the Rockets this year have been Capella and his development this season. Luke Mbah a Moute coming in and being a wing defender. P.J. Tucker coming in and being a wing defender. Look, the Rockets have always been able to score. Chris Paul, no Chris Paul, they would be able to score with James Harden. Where they have struggled is getting stops. And those guys in the lineup are going to be a difference-making type of defensive players against the Golden State. Mbah a Moute on Durant, P.J. Tucker mixing and matching on different guys. If those guys are healthy, that series suddenly becomes a dogfight.
Yeah, I believe that's a great series. The one thing, though, you do have to understand with Chris Paul and with Harden, they don't have great success together. Like, they've had some failures together. And to me, that would be at the forefront of my mind. And emotionally, look at what happened with Chris Paul, Ariza, and them going to the locker room. Like, you're going to get in some heated exchanges, all right? When you play the Warriors, that 2-week time, if you're distracted, you're not going to be able to defeat them. So for me, I just wonder, do they have the grit? Do they have that inward, that confidence inside to be able to, in a 7-game series, to be able to win Game 7 in Golden State, which we know it just takes special stuff to do. And when you've never seen it done, I believe it is an argument that we should have before they face each other.
And they beat them twice already this year. Not that the Warriors are concerned. The Warriors had a really easy time, I would say, last year skating through to the finals. Do you factor and fold the Rockets into what it's going to take this year, or is it going to be equally?
Well, that's what I think is critical.
Yes,
one of the
in
reasons,
the West.
One of the reasons the Warriors were able to beat the Cavs in 5 was because they had swept their previous 3 series. Like the amount of rest and the amount of the lack of chances to turn an ankle, to have an injury by playing fewer games. So when we're talking about can the Rockets beat the Warriors, you know who's going to have a lot to say about that? The Spurs or the Timberwolves or the Thunder, whomever the Warriors play in the second round. Because I think the Warriors beat all those teams. But if one of those teams can take them to 6, make them work a little bit, like then all of a sudden the margin, the degree of difficulty gets much higher. And same on the flip side. If the Rockets need 7 games in the second round, their chances of beating the Warriors in round 3 goes down dramatically. Like that rest inside the playoff bracket is enormous, at least in my eyes.
I agree with you. And look, the second round matchup, let's say Oklahoma City winds up in that 4 seed. Like, that second round matchup is going to be a street fight. That is going to be a street fight because, and I said it at the top briefly, but you can't sleep on what Oklahoma City's doing right now, largely because Carmelo Anthony, for the second time this season, has evolved his game, adapted his game. He came in and said, look, I'm okay being a power forward, which he never said when he was in New York. And over the last month, he said, look, I'm okay being a spot-up shooter, which he's never said before. If he continues to accept that type of role and this team continues to grow, they were already, start of the season, Oklahoma City, a top 5 level defensive team.
Yes.
Their offensive numbers have improved incrementally over the last month. If that's a second-round matchup, I think that's at least a 6-game series, maybe 7.
Wow.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.